Well, good Friday afternoon to everyone. It is Friday, April 24th, and I'm here with my co host, Bill Teese from WJE Company. We'll hear some exciting news from him, I'm sure, in regarding to a new venture he's doing, and we'll applaud him for being a solopreneur or an entrepreneur. I guess you took on a partner or something like that. But and then we have a special guest, a good friend of mine, and someone that I've had the opportunity to be on his show, and I'm excited to have him. Ben Dryden is here from DrydenWire. Many people know Ben. Be sure to like and share this post that you're watching right now. Let people know that we're live, and put any questions that you have in the comments, and we'll try and make those part of the show. But for right now, I wanted to let's just go ahead and break the ice on Bill's new venture. Bill, what are you doing over there at the Three Arrows Coffee Shop?
Yeah, so Tyler, who is the owner of Three Arrows, and his parents, they became a client of mine. I rented a space from them. They became a client of mine from the consulting side, and as I got to know them and know Tyler and know the family and kind of their whole motto about doing business, and I love coffee, and Tyler makes amazing coffee, and we started looking at it, and it just made a whole lot of sense to spin off the roasting part of their business. So when things open up and loosen back up, you'll be able to come in, and the big downstairs area had a roaster in it, but we've moved some walls. And right now we are cranking out, or Tyler is, I'm sitting at home mostly, but he's cranking out coffee. He's roasting it. And it's all under the Three Arrows brand right now. We have to do a few things. We have to get certified. We have to get an inspector out, which inspectors aren't really interested in, coming out and doing those things right now. So we got a few steps to go before Three Arrows Roasting officially will be up, but you can taste it's going to be the same coffee. We're just going to be spinning it off, and I am just absolutely stoked to partner with them on this. We are, it's our goal to make things, take what is a local treat and move it a little more regionally and hopefully nationally at some point. So exciting. When some people, when global pandemics hit, cower, others start new businesses. So right. Hopefully I can look back at this and think I'm not insane, but I don't think so. People need coffee.
That's great. I think coffee is one of those things that are going to, coffee and beer are the two things that probably will do well in this pandemic.
Yeah, those are what we call essentials.
Yes, essentials. Actually. Are you a coffee drinker, Ben, or are you a beer
I
drinker?
Probably a little bit of both.
A little bit of both. There you go.
But yeah, no coffee. Good night.
Yeah. So
I get up at 4 a.m, man, and if it wasn't for coffee, I'm not sure if I could do it.
Oh man, 4 a.m. That's a rough one. So Bill, is this something that's going to be sellable amongst? Could you provide it to churches?
So it'll be business. Yeah. It'll be business. It'll be business to consumer direct. You can buy it, in the store or on the website. It'll be business to business direct as well. We already have a few customers that a manufacturing company brings it in. They buy 10, 20 pounds a week, and we take it up to them.
Wholesale or whole bean or ground? Can we grind our
whole bean or ground? Either one. Right now we're only doing 1 pound bags. We're going to do 1 pound bags, 5 pound bags. And, our goal eventually is to get into the Keurig cups and also, bottle cold brew. And if you've never had the nitro from Three Arrows, we want to try and figure out how to get that bottled as well. And, hopefully be able to make this, kind of a big deal. So nice. We're super excited about it. I'm excited about it, and it gives me something to look forward to. And, Tyler's going to take care of the roasting. He's amazing at that. I'm going to help him with that a little bit, but I'm kind of more the business. And so I'll be making sure that the business runs smooth. That's my forte. So cool. It's a natural partner, a natural partnership, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, one of the things that we talk about on this show amongst business and technology, we talk about spinning, pivoting, upping your game, and that's one of the. Oh, Tyler said I'm roasting coffee now, so we'll have to run.
Good, get roasting, man. Now that the world knows this, we posted it yesterday on Facebook, and we had a huge reach, and the post just disappeared.
Right.
It just went goodbye. Yeah, just gone. So we had to repost it this morning. It's bizarre. I have some screenshots, but it doesn't help out. So get roasting, Tyler. People are going to want it.
Get to work. So one of the things that we talk about on our show is obviously technology. We've talked about how we are really in a place where we need to pivot if necessary to up our game. And one of the reasons that I invited my friend Ben on our show is because he took a traditionally paper-driven, subscription-based model and took it to the next level, bringing it on Facebook and the website. He's on Twitter. He's on YouTube. And so, Ben, I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about how you decided to get started with DrydenWire as it sits now and how it's transformed over the last, how many years have you done this?
4.5 years. I think we went live October 1st, 2015.
Okay. So I noticed you've got a better microphone, and that's an upgrade. What else?
My first ever upgrade, by the way, because just a real quick thing, if anyone was ever wondering, because I really like being a guest. This is the first time I've ever been a guest on anything.
There you go.
Because usually, I host a show, and I have to be the one like what you're doing right now, kind of just steering the train. But when I started this, I think a lot of people, when they want to start anything, whether it's a business, whether it's a Facebook Live, or what you guys are doing, Kirk and Bill's show, it's easy to get caught up in, I need this camera. Oh, no, I need this microphone. Sometimes, dude, you just got to do it. And you kind of figure the rest out as you go. But we've had, 3 years, I think, now of doing chats. Now, obviously, with COVID-19, the safer at home, we can't have people here in the studio. So we have to do it remotely, which what you guys are doing as well. You've adapted, I guess. But knowing that, I'm like, we have a $70 webcam. We had like a $20 microphone.
Well, I will say, Ben, if you go to
and
Amazon
nothing. So this is the first one we've ever actually upgraded and spent any money on. And no kidding, I'm actually really happy with it.
If you go to Amazon, Ben, your camera is now $300 because it is so popular. So keep that in mind.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So
but going back to what you had originally asked about why to start it. So it was a situation where I came up here. I grew up in Shell Lake. I live now here in Spooner, but it's in Washburn County. I was gone for 20 years, and every time I came up to visit my folks, I would see like a newspaper, and this is not a slam on them. In fact, I'm a huge supporter of newspapers. I'm sure we'll touch on that later. But I'm used to living in big cities, having everything on my mobile device, and having it now. And that was something where I recognized that maybe there's a hole here for something like that. So that's really what started this whole idea of a lot of that could be similar content or maybe not content that's similar, but it was just something where, I don't know, I think it is. And, I think I spent like 3 months trying to figure out, is this plausible? Is this something that will go well? Right. I basically decided I want to do the opposite of what everyone else is doing. So instead of a weekly print, I want to do not even daily, just up to the minute. As soon as we get it, we're publishing it. Instead of charging, we'll just do it free. So I basically decided if it's going to be successful, we just have to rethink everything about how news is consumed in Northwest Wisconsin. I literally went out with a piece of paper and a spreadsheet, and I had 100 columns over like 10 spreadsheet, or 10 pages. And I asked business owners and just people on the street here in Shell Lake and Spooner, told them about the idea of DrydenWire, what it would look like, and asked if they thought it would be viable, if it would be successful, and if it's needed. 98 out of 100 of them said no to all three of those things.
Really?
I literally still have the spreadsheet, so I never, because it motivated me. The only two that said yes were my mother, who actually does DrydenWire stuff. She's a 3-time published author, writer for 20 years, and at the time, girlfriend, who's not my wife. Everyone else said this is never going to work. It's a bad idea. Whatever. Skipping 4.5 years later, here we are.
Well, you've had a good run of success. One thing that we've talked about and I've noted is that the caliber of guests that you have on your show is quite high for an individual who lives in Washburn County in the middle of rural Wisconsin. Some of the guests that you've had on your show recently, you've had Senator Patty Shockner today.
This morning, right?
You've had past Representative Adam Jarko a number of times. You've had many sheriffs, a lot of candidates for office tend to come to you first because what do you have, 15,000 or more followers on your page?
I think we have over 15,000 likes and 16 or 17,000 followers on our Facebook page, right?
And then you have reach at other places. So from a strictly from a I'm getting the word out, people know that you in this area, because that's one of, Bill and I have joked about this too. We feel a little bit more like Minnesota because all of our news is from the Twin Cities. We're in the Twin Cities market.
Yeah.
And so when we want to hear something, what happened up in Grantsburg, or what happened in Amory last night, it usually takes about 5 days for the paper to get out, and then maybe it'll be in there. And so that's always been a frustration. So now we used to be that we would hear Washburn news, but you've expanded. So how far out does DrydenWire cover?
Well, in terms of our followers, it's all over. Obviously, Northwest Wisconsin starts there, and then it kind of expands out a little bit further. But we really kind of cover 5, borderline 6 counties. So Barron, Burnett. I'm trying to do it alphabetically. Polk, Sawyer, Rusk first, Sawyer, and then Washburn. And honestly, when we first started, it was really just more about Washburn. And it was like 6 months in, we realized that you look at these county lines, and they're almost like these arbitrary things where it doesn't matter. I mean, Siren from Spooner is like 22 minutes. Well, that's a different county. Rice Lake is 22 minutes away. Well, that's a different county. This is dumb. So we kind of started expanding a little bit. And actually, I want to go back to what you had said about getting news from the cities. That kind of went into, at least our original thinking about DrydenWire we called it the Bermuda Triangle of Dead Media in North Wisconsin. It's like the Twin Cities south, Superior, Duluth south, down to, say, Eau Claire, and then over to the cities. And everything that falls into that little triangle there, it's just weekly subscriptions and weekly papers. And again, they absolutely should be doing that. There's so much content in there that we don't do because we never wanted to compete with them. Right. They're doing a great job, right? They just absolutely are killing it. And their sports sections alone, it's like, well, I don't want to do sports because they do a really good job doing sports. So DrydenWire wasn't meant to compete with a local newspaper. DrydenWire was meant to be in conjunction with a local newspaper to allow or hopefully establish some of the most informed community members in a rural area in any part of the country. And that was really the goal, because if you had to pick between like Hulu and Netflix and you only had $8 or $10 a month, well, what if one of them was free? Now you don't have to pick. So please keep getting a subscription to a paper. Number one, it's a local business. It costs you like less than a cup of coffee a week for a paper. Come on, man. Right. Like, just please buy a paper, buy a subscription. They'll deliver it to you. And plus, they have a lot of content that we don't do because they are more focused on the smaller area. We try to pick up maybe a little bit more of the bigger stories over, 5 or 6 county radius.
And I will acknowledge that, because I know that the reporters are actually writing the stories and putting a lot of effort into developing, a full page article on specific things where you are getting the news out fast, but you tend to publish a press release and get it out quick that way. Is that accurate?
Well, it is, because when realizing that it's just basically me, it's just a one-man show, that I can't write 20 stories a day. I mean, my goodness, there's just no way I'd be able to do it. So it was really just I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. It was just a different medium, a different platform on how to get the information. Right. But just like when you pick up a local paper, you're going to find 2 or 3 or however many original stories, excluding sports. But in terms of just news and stories, written articles, you're not going to find a ton, or maybe 5. And that's normal, because the rest of it is all submitted to them as well, whether it's meeting notice, upcoming agenda items for another different meeting, letters to the editor, guest opinions, guest views. So really, that is similar to what we're doing too. So then the question was, well, what is our original thing? Because it can't just be aggregating and curating content. It also needs to have some original articles, or something has to be original, and ideally on a daily basis. And that was always our goal, to have one thing that's an original thing every day. So once again, when I'm kind of looking at the local newspapers, It was, well, I don't think we really cover a whole lot when it comes to crime and court stories. So I figured, well, that could be a niche for us. And that's really what we started. So up until Safer at Home, we would probably have one a day, sometimes two, which depends on what's going on in the courthouse. We would have articles on individuals that are charged with a crime, that are arrested, and there's a criminal complaint that was filed and is now public record. We call, request it, we have to pay for those, and then we do a story on it. And that really was that's kind of our niche. But of course, as you guys have said, how are people transitioning during the Safer at Home? Well, there's not a whole lot of crime going on right now, which is good.
Yeah.
But that's our original stories. So that's when about 3.5 weeks ago, it's why I still want to do something original every day. And therefore, I started every morning, Monday through Friday at 8:30 on our Facebook page.
Right.
It's a different guest. And that's what actually led us to this, because we also have to transition a little bit.
And obviously, live video, we do live video. It's kind of challenging. You've got to try and not say and ah. And
I'd say and ah all the time.
You can't take back. Yeah, you can't take back a lot of the things that you say that you go, oh, that didn't come out right. You're live, but it's entertaining.
It's more fun.
In COVID-19, we get a lot of people that tune into us live or watch it after the fact. I mean, it's a lot of fun. But what you did is you pivoted before the COVID-19, and you did something that is now allowing you to be very successful in the news market, where the mom and pop print it and put it in the post office box and put it in the local gas station, and people are looking at these papers and they're saying, man, I don't really want to pick that up. How many people have touched it, or whatever makes them nervous. Bill maybe wants to jump in here too. How do you make money giving away free news? I mean, Bill's probably going, geez, free. Oof, that's tough. But you do, obviously, it's a business. You make money.
Money.
What do you do? Money, yeah.
I was going to say free sounds a lot like my business right now. There's not a lot of people that are looking to pay bills for a business consultant. So
right. Yep.
Giving a lot of free advice. And I know I talked to a couple of, some bankers and some CPAs too, that are they're advising businesses, and it's just like they're not making any money on it because everyone's calling in and saying, what do I do? And you give them the best advice you can. But, your business is a little bit different. So do you sell ads, or how do you keep the squirrels running to, keep the generators turning so you can keep power on?
Yeah, great question, actually. But I can tell you this. You want to find hardworking people, find a small business owner.
Yeah.
When you see all those statistics, or I don't know if any of these are true, or just the ones that I've heard, like 80% of businesses fail, and I don't know what it was, a year, 2 years or something. I don't necessarily think it's just because of the money. I think it's because they didn't realize how much work. They like the idea, but I don't know any small business owner that when they started for this first 2, 3, 4 years that weren't working 12, 16, 18-hour days.
It's hard.
It is absolutely hard. I think, again, a lot of them go into it thinking, I like the idea of it, and I want some money from it, and I don't want to work very hard. But then don't do it. Like, I don't care if you love it, because what have we heard so many times, that if you find something that you love, that you'll never work a day in your life. Guys, I'm telling you right now, I work 16 to 18-hour days for 4.5 years, and it feels like I'm working 16-hour, 18-hour days every day. But it's totally worth it because I love what I do. It is a lot of work. I want to go back to, I think it was what Kirk was saying about the newspapers, and sometimes that it is the kind of old news by the time you get it. I think now is an absolutely critical time for our local newspapers. Something that I think a lot of businesses that you guys have mentioned before, that a couple years ago maybe you should have been putting some plans in place, right? But you kept putting it off. It's Monday. It's like the Monday diet, right? I'll do it Monday. Well, now you're kind of forced to have to do it now. But newspapers, I think, should have been doing this a little earlier. But now they are in a very critical time. And I also think that this is perhaps the most important time for local news. And you're going to get that from a local newspaper. The question is, are they going to transition into hyper-local news? Because that's a niche that a DrydenWire can't touch, that KARE 11 can't touch, WPR, WRN, WISN out of Milwaukee. I mean, it's what? I mean, pretty much now, like everyone is just paying Associated Press this package so they to publish their things. And you're a local paper. Like that'd be fine if DrydenWire did it because we cover a larger area. But man, you guys have an advantage over everyone else. So the question is, if that's what's going to be in the paper, how do you use online and social media to put out content and information without taking away from your newspapers? That's the big key for them.
And I think that a lot of papers have seen what you're doing, and I've noticed that they put out more information a little bit quicker. It might not be as dolled up and pretty, but they are putting out the breaking news on the website, and I think that's a great way to get started.
Well, and again, going back to
press releases are important, though, and then the follow-up story is important too. It's
I agree.
They're the local papers. I forgot to say congratulations, Kirk, on being officially sworn in. But after sitting through public meetings, school board meetings, and planning commission meetings, DrydenWire can't do that.
Yeah,
you don't have the ability. You don't have the ability.
Ben?
None.
Well, not only that, but the area. How many people would you have to do to hit all the schools?
That's it sets a precedent where now we couldn't. If we went to one, then that's holy cow. Right. We can't go through all of those things. Right. It's just too many things to do.
But the local papers have that ability.
They do, and
tremendous service.
And going to the press release, this is another thing that we kind of set up because it was about 6 months of production before we went live. The reason that we publish a press release. So here's a little inside information about the news world. If you or your listeners are curious, so we will get a press release just like everyone else gets a press release. They send it to all media outlets. Well, depending on who's sending it, but they'll send it to the appropriate media outlets. I didn't know this at the time, but it didn't take me very long to figure out. So when, let's say, I don't know, Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald sends out from law enforcement a press release, we put in the byline, Sheriff's Office or Sheriff's Department, Barron County Sheriff's Department, and we put it under press release. We even say press release. I mean, it's all right there. And we literally just copy and paste the press release. That's it. Like, here's a booking photo, here's the headline, but it was all set. Mm-hmm. Well, let's say they sent it to 10 other news outlets. Of those, and DrydenWire being one, 9 of the other ones won't publish the entire press release because of well, I'm assuming, I guess I don't know this for sure, they reference the press release. They say, according to this, and they may change, not their words necessarily, but you're taking a press release and turning it into a story. And I always felt like I hate reading those when it says, according to the press release. Well, just let me see the press release. Just They worked on it. I just want to read it. Right. And I realized why they don't want to, because then if another media outlet didn't have that press release, now they got the press release and they can just use it. Right? It's the same thing. And it's, but that's dangerous, man, because you change a word from an and to an or a but to an if. I don't know. The liability there was too much for me. And I'm like, that again, plus it takes a lot of time to rewrite it. You send it to us. We're going to publish it as is. That's it. We stick to the facts. Let the viewers come to their own conclusions.
Yeah, I would say I've read a lot of press releases, and I'm not a grammar Nazi by any means. I'm happy when my wife edits, but I've learned to use Grammarly. And
I love it. I love Grammarly.
That has really honed my my enjoyment of putting out content that people read, because I feel a little more confident. There are a lot of press releases that someone should have checked, and then it makes you look bad. People,
I know, because then we get the kind of saying, "Hey, you got
a problem."
Right. Your word was spelled wrong, and it's like, no, I tell them all. I copy and paste, because as soon as I start changing one person's incorrect spelling of a word, it sets a precedent, man, and I'm not ready to go down that road.
Right. Yeah, and you don't want that responsibility. Well, I think a big part of what we talk about when we talk about pivoting and upping your game and things like that, every business right now is looking at how to do this, how to do it better, how to just get online, sell online. What are some of the tools? I have a setup. I'm a videographer and a podcaster, so I have the expensive microphone and cameras and all that junk. Ben's a news guy. He's upgraded his game. We're working on Bill. He's sounds fine. His camera looks fine. 90% of the time, people probably don't care, but he's using an iPad. Yeah. So you don't have to go live.
Right.
Go and spend $10,000. You know, Ben, what did you start out with, and what are you using now that is up to your game so that you are? I'm going to call you the #1 news guy in Northwestern Wisconsin.
What?
Yeah, there's no one else unless you're a TV studio. You're when
#1 of 1. Hey,
that's right.
Top dog in a one-dog town. I'll take it.
Tom Tiffany and
Ultra.
Tricia Zunker and Jason Church, when they were running for Congress, did they contact any other news agencies around, or did they contact DrydenWire? They contacted a guy sitting in an office with a green screen. I don't want to tell anybody you got a green screen, but in a microphone.
That's totally my back wall.
Because they wanted to be on your show. I think that's incredible. I mean, think about that. It is amazing that we have the technology and the ability to do that, and you don't have to spend a ton of money to do it. So what are you using technology-wise? Let's give a little encouragement to these mom and pop shops that are like, I really need to get online, but I'm scared. I only have an iPhone. Dude, iPhone
First of all, I'll be a guest on your show anytime. This is great.
Thanks.
You give me compliments and shoot. Let's do it again tomorrow. But so when we first started this, like a lot of things, like most people, when they start anything, you have a basic idea. You don't know if it's going to work or not. But the #1 thing, like no kidding, don't overthink it. You just have to do it. Don't worry about the equipment. I'm literally right now using that very cheap camera. After 3 years, we finally actually purchased a nice microphone. But again, it was I can't remember the name of those microphones that we purchased. And then we upgraded to like $60 microphones. But the funny thing is, the guests that we've been having on, they're just using their phones. Bill, he's just using his iPad. We had Judge John Yackel on. He's been on like 4 or 5 times now. And now since the COVID-19 safer at home, he was at home. He didn't have earbuds. He didn't have anything. He was just an iPad. I think it was an iPad mini. And it was just sitting right there. Mm-hmm. The thing is you have to look at why are you doing it? Like, what do you want to do?
What's your message?
Like, that's more important than anything. I know we've been asked many times, or I've been asked many times, who's your favorite guest you've ever had? And I don't know. It's hard to say really favorite but I can tell you what makes a good show. And that is not just information, because information can be really boring. Like someone could just read, like, I don't know, the encyclopedia. Well, that's informative, but good night, right? You want to stab your eye with a field rake, just watching somebody talking about, encyclopedia. So insightfulness, opinions. So insightfulness, I think, is absolutely the key. Offer something that nobody else. That's what I love about the Kirk and Bill show, is that you're giving information that is now insightful. And that insightfulness that means that you're providing something to your viewers that they normally wouldn't have access to, or it's kind of like this behind the scenes thing. So I think #1 has to start there. #2, it's got to have a little humor, a little fun, a little levity is always a good thing. But I really wouldn't worry about the technical parts of it. And if you want to create like a fake Facebook page or just another one, or do it on your personal one and just start testing some things out. But if the only thing that is restricting you from doing anything that's live or anything with video and audio is technology and money, then seriously, don't do that. Please don't. Just start, just try. People are going to be understanding. Well, you just referenced Patty Schochner that we were on this morning. We've had a few guests that quality wasn't that great, but if the content's good, people are going to read it. The old saying in the newspaper business, I guess, I didn't know this till a few years ago, was that content is king. And I heard that, and I said, I disagree. I think good content is king.
Yeah.
And there's a difference there.
I always talk with my clients when I say, hey, let's do a video, and they get really nervous. I'm not very good.
Yeah.
There's a couple things I do. One is I try and encourage them and tell them that we all suffer or can suffer from paralysis, from overanalysis.
Overanalysis.
You know, and so when you overthink it, like you're saying, you tend to delete the video. It wasn't good enough, or you just don't publish the video because it wasn't good enough. And you know, there's the 80-20 rule with video. It's like 95%. If you are willing to publish a video, and Bill and I did this too. We talked about this back before January 1st. It took a pandemic for us to say, hey, we don't have anything else going on. Well, let's do a show. But if you just publish it, people will appreciate the fact that you put the effort in, and you're going to get, you might get some critical whatever. We haven't yet, and I'm sure it's coming. But
people will take a look, or they'll take a listen, and if it's their cup of tea and you keep putting it out, they'll come back. If it's not.
Yeah, and if you're honest with people, right? So just tell them, hey, this is our first one ever, guys. Right. Just we're just trying to figure it out. Then people are perfectly fine.
Yeah,
it's amazing how much grace it's amazing how much grace you get on that. You know, honestly, it's amazing.
It really is. I mean, when we first actually did this, Kirk, I remember you and I were talking about this, man, like 3 years ago, because you're using Ecamm and that's what we use as well. But at the time, I was using, I think, Be Live, so it was mainly a Facebook thing. And it was, I mean, just a debacle. I mean, absolutely not a debacle. It was technologically not smooth. I remember Romaine Quinn, the 75th Assembly District Representative, and Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald were our first two guests, the only ones even agreed to do this. Because they said, what are you talking about? Yeah. And I'm like, I have no agenda. Like, to this day, I don't even have anything written down for the get. I have no clue. It's like Saturday Night Live, but without, funny. Actually, you know what? That is Saturday Night Live. So we did this remotely, and man, we run into some problems. I mean, we ran into so many issues and the sound and all this, and then after both those shows with Romaine Quinn and Chris Fitzgerald, they watched it, and then I asked them, hey, I think we may have figured out a couple things of the audio or a couple things of the video. Would you be interested in coming on again? Both like, yep.
Yeah.
And that's awesome,
now
right? Because it's
the best show. Yeah. Who has the most show hosts? I think
so.
It's
just
amazing.
don't. I guess my thing is that you just, man, don't overthink it. Bill's using again an iPad. That's it. That's all you need. Earbuds, good idea. That's probably a good idea. It helps with reverb or everything else.
Yeah.
And that's it. Or a lot of phones. I don't know about the iPhones now because I don't think they even have that little spot you can plug in anymore.
Get a dongle.
That's just it. A dongle. That's the dumbest name for those things.
Dumbest word ever.
And that's it. And seriously, plug it in. Go to Facebook. Go to Zoom. Do anything.
Yeah.
Test it out a few times. Be honest with people. But the key is, if you have something to say, people will, and they're interested, they'll listen. And don't worry about how many views you get.
Right.
To this day, I have no idea when Scott Walker was on how many views he had versus Adam Jarkall on Wednesday. Don't know, because as soon as I start looking at numbers, then it may change what I want to do, because it's, well, maybe we should do more of this. It's you got to do what you want to do, and for the reasons that you think are the right reasons, and then just jump in, man. That's it.
Well, I want to acknowledge a comment from Rayanne, who says watching a video is easier than reading, especially when a toddler, she must have a toddler. I can play it on my TV if I want, and having it in the background, it's hard to read with a kiddo. So I totally appreciate that. I've got 5 kiddos of my own, so I get that. Just for a business that's thinking about doing this, obviously they can reach out to me as a consultant. I help set this type of stuff up for churches and businesses, and that's part of my business. But just some quick tips on getting started is, don't overthink it. Be willing to publish it, even if it's not perfect. Use good lighting, and try and get an earbud with a microphone. If you're
lighting in front of you is better.
And a tripod. Yeah. Don't walk around with your phone when you're doing a live show. It's a little crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And actually, just call you, because you were just over here about a month ago.
Yeah.
Or two. And you helped me get a lot of things set up. And again, you can just take it in pieces. You can get bigger later on. But it took us 2 years to finally get to the point where I was even comfortable doing them, because I had so many issues, and I was so worried when I was doing the shows that it wasn't being right, or this audio wasn't right, and can people hear them? And I was so worried.
Yep.
It took me a long time to get past that. And we've slowly then, kind of increased, I think, our production a little bit and our guests as well. So, yeah, cool.
Well, I appreciate having you on, Ben. You've been a great friend for a number of years. It's amazing when you said 3.5 years that you reached out. It's been about 4 years since we've first connected or more. And you've been a motivation for me to get started. I had eCam for a long time before I ever did a live show.
Right. Yeah.
And you kept saying, you got to do it. So thank you for your motivation. Bill probably thanks you too, because I provide the
Bill thanks you too.
And Bill just sits there and talks. But it's been a pleasure to be able to help you out with getting you started on some of the higher quality stuff. And
yeah, you were a huge help, man. I wouldn't have been able to do it without you. And actually, at some point, I need to talk to you again, because we may be looking to finally, after 3.5 years, upgrade from a $70 webcam to a nicer camera. So
yeah,
we'll probably have to be in touch.
Right now, they're all sold out all over the United States.
I know it.
Webcam if you want one.
Well, hey, we may have one. We'll sell for cheap.
Yeah, that's.
And by the way, Kirk, congratulations on I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, yeah.
Mr. Mayor. You should change the name of your show now. Mayor.
I went for a walk with my wife last night, and we did a couple miles on some trails, and had a number of people. Some people stopped driving their car and said, "Mr. Mayor," and you kind of look over your shoulder like, who are you talking to? It's a little weird, but I appreciate the respect.
Did they throw anything though?
Nobody.
That's really what you got. Mr. Mayor. Wow.
Yeah. Nope. So far, I haven't ticked anybody off. So.
Are you now requiring your wife to call you Mr. Mayor?
Honey is fine. She's probably watching.
Okay.
He only demands that she plays "Hail to the Chief" every time he walks in. So that's the weird part.
Yeah, my kids have to sing that. So, well, that's great. Well, Ben, you're free to stick around if you want. We're going to talk some financial stuff, but if you,
I would love to, but I got to get ready to get those 2 p.m. numbers up from the CDC Wisconsin
awesome.
Numbers.
Well, I appreciate your insight on all those things, and we're gonna let you go, and we are going to talk about some financial stuff and some government stuff. So thanks, Ben, and you're always welcome.
Thanks,
on.
Guys.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Awesome. Thank you so very much.
All right, sounds great. Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right, so we are back with Kirk and Bill. Let me throw up a new nameplate up there. So yeah, let's transition and start talking about what's going on in the government. There is a lot going on, and I'm going to let you lead the ship on this and take it away. So bring us up to speed.
All right, I will fire away the best that I can. The Senate and the House passed an additional stimulus bill. It had, I think the total was about $600 billion or $650 billion. It is replenishing the payment protection program that through the SBA, and there's either thousands or tens of thousands of companies that are queued up waiting for that money, and I'm sure that will be dispersed very quickly. Additionally, in there, I think there's $75 billion for local hospitals, and there was some other money for the EIDL loan. All of those things were evaporated pretty quickly. So there's more money in there. If you haven't applied, I would encourage you to go to one of our local banks, or a local bank if you're listening somewhere else. This round there was either 60 or 80 billion dollars that was earmarked only for local and community banks. So the Bank of America, Chase, the giant banks, they didn't get all that. Also, some companies have come under scrutiny. Ruth's Chris Steakhouse was one, Shake Shack was another, and they have said, what, we're going to give the money back. They're Shake Shack's publicly traded, and they raised $120 million by selling our shares of stock. So this really is meant for small businesses, which is good. So on top of that, I've heard that there's another multi-trillion-dollar stimulus that is being talked about called Phase 4. We're going to have a discussion at some point of how are we ever going to pay this off. It's probably going to be my grandkids or my great-great-grandkids or whatever, but the money is just going to keep being thrown at it until the economy opens it back up. Couple other things. This certainly now has become a 100% political thing, the whole COVID response. Do we open the economy back up? Is it staggered? Is it phased? How do we do it? That has become a political football where both sides are trying to score touchdowns and points off each other. And quite frankly, it's ridiculous. I don't care for it. There is a suit. The state elected Republicans have filed suit against Governor Evers and Secretary Designee Palm, saying that she extended to May 26th the safer at home order, and maybe that's outside jurisdiction. So I'm expecting, and we're expecting the state Supreme Court to weigh in on whether that is legal or not. Either way, the governor's powers run out of declaring emergency is 60 days, and that can't be extended without legislature approval. So there's a lot of thinking that in that May 11, 12, 13 timeframe, depending upon what day you go off of, some of that will be phased back, but most certainly there will be some sort of an agreement, or at least I hope there's some sort of agreement of how we do a staggered opening to the economy. What are the metrics? There was this Badger Bounceback plan that was introduced, and it was very similar to what the feds had put out. But again, I think personally, I'm hoping that some regionalism can be brought into this. Certainly, Milwaukee has a much higher infection rate than maybe Polk County does or Burnett. So hopefully we can look at these rural areas that don't have it as bad and just kind of have a measured approach when we come back. I don't know if you heard Governor Walz or read about Governor Walz in Minnesota, and us being on the river, and I can see Minnesota from where I am right now. We kind of look at the Minneapolis market as well. He said something to the effect that he would have a hard time seeing the Minnesota State Fair go on this year, which is a big deal. Wow. And also he said that the Minnesota Department of Education or Public Instruction, whatever it is, in Minnesota, is making alternative plans in case school isn't ready to go in the fall.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So,
and I think we have to realize that it's likely that this is never going to fully go away.
Right.
It's one thing to hope that it burns out, but the flu never goes away. So
comes and goes.
Yep. I mean, SARS did kind of burn itself out. They never really fixed that. It just
disappeared.
It just
disappeared.
Which makes you wonder, but we're not going to get into conspiracies.
If we want to do a show on conspiracies, we should, just make sure that everybody tunes in for that. Yeah, I could line up guests for miles.
I look at my Facebook feed and I could just pick I could just close my eyes and pick, and there's a conspiracy. So, the hope is that this will burn itself out if enough people just stop being infected and passing it around. But it's possible that it could go longer. But can you imagine the financial difficulties for businesses who make a great profit from the state fair?
There's a number of places that's what they do. If they don't have that, they're out of business.
And
there just is
similar to what we talked about with like bars and restaurants downtown. If there's no sports season and
right.
they don't get a chance to open up to that market, it's going to be really hard for a lot of those businesses, restaurants, sports vendors, whatever it may be, to
right.
stay alive. And can you imagine another season of NFL or NBA without anybody in the stands? It's just going to be crushing. So,
well, I can tell you this: the NFL draft round 1 was last night, and they did it through video conferencing, and it was pretty wild to how they pulled it off. They had every prospect had a camera in their house. The commissioner was in one place. There was the television host in another place. And then both the NFL Network and ESPN normally compete, but they decided to work together on this. So they would have like a Zoom screen with 6 people after someone would get drafted, and they had a host that was kind of, shooting it all around. It was pretty wild. So the NFL is getting into that too. And I'll circle back around with that and talk a little crap about the Packers in a second. But
you didn't like their pick?
I love their pick because I'm a Vikings fan. I don't think their quarterback Aaron Rodgers is going to like their pick. They traded up to pick a quarterback. So they're already, the trouble in paradise, very similar to when Aaron Rodgers was drafted and Brett Favre was still there. So I'm thinking that in 2 or 3 years, Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be the quarterback for the Vikings when Kirk Cousins' new contract runs out. So it's all going to come full circle. It'll all be fine. But while Zoom, so this is the world we live in. While I'm watching the NFL draft on Zoom, I had 6, 7 of my buddies also on Zoom coming back to me, and we were experiencing the draft that way. And it was all guys, my buddies from college, and a couple of them own. 2 of them are business owners that own restaurants. One is more of a sports bar and food, and one is kind of more of a sit down family restaurant. And we kind of in the lull times we'll talk about how everyone's job is going. And man, restaurants have it tough.
Yeah.
A number of problems, right? They're closed, so they're not making any money. They have to do it. But even getting the PPP loans, they'll essentially, if they're not open, all they're going to do is just pay people to not work.
Right.
Or that's the only way it can be forgiven. So there's like this weird disincentive. And beyond that, people are going to make more. So like servers, they can make $1,200-$1,300 a week on unemployment right now. So so even if my buddies call them and say, hey, you want to come back to work, they're going to,
There's a lot of
it's
employees who are not happy because they're being recalled to work, and they would rather make the extra dough by sitting at home, which is part of the problem. Not to be political, but that's part of the problem with the idea of socialism, is it incentivizes you to not do anything. And so if businesses are going to be successful because of hardworking Americans that are going to put in some sweat equity and build this up, Minnesota Congresswoman put out the idea of giving every American $2,000 a month for
the UBI. I mean, that's Bernie Sanders ran on that similar platform, and I think Andrew Yang also universal basic income. And I don't really want to get into that.
I don't either, to be honest with you. But
yeah, I will say that if you work in a retail setting or a restaurant and you're going to come into contact with the public, and you have the option for another 10, 12, 13 weeks to be made whole and stay safe and stay home and not be exposed to the public, or come back and work, it's not an easy call. I mean, that's why would anyone do that?
Right.
I mean, I know why some people would, because they don't want to sit at home and they get bored and they feel the desire to work. I get that, but it's the incentive really isn't there to go back. One, you're going to be exposed to the public, and 2, you're not really losing out on any money.
Well, we saw in the last
we've created an interesting program. It's got a lot of interesting facets to it.
And that's national. All over the country, there's different communities that are doing different things, and that's part of the Constitution gives a lot of power to states and governors. And we're seeing, which I'm happy about, but we're seeing a lot of states doing things that other states are, balking at, or celebrities are balking at. How do we produce the safer at home? We stay safe, but we still open up the economy and continue to be, viable without reintroducing more disease? That's the $1 million question, and I don't think anybody has a great answer. But I was listening to a friend of mine down in Tennessee who was talking about why people disagree on this whole process, and he had a great lead-in. One of them, the last one, was that because of unemployment and because of what's happening, people will die from that as well, because of hospitals not being able to do the normal services. People will prolong their normal.
People aren't going in to get care. I mean, again, why would you go where people are sick right now?
Right.
I mean, that's the question.
But then when you get rushed in an ambulance because you're doubled over in pain, and they find that your appendix is 3 times the size that it should be, and it's about to burst, instead of, preemptively, I've got a pain.
Right.
So that's what I'm hearing is that a lot of people are just not going in for normal stuff. So we're getting less calls, but then when they do go in, it is like
it's bad
emergency. Yeah. And so that's a big concern, and certainly something that we need to look at. There was a hospital, and I didn't know where it was, but they were basically saying, because of how unaffected things have been, that they are planning on reopening for their non-essential services sooner than later, and a lot of restaurants and a lot of businesses are looking at that. We had our Polk County Sheriff put out a statement that was somewhat confusing to a lot of people who thought he was giving permission for the economy to open. I called him, talked to him, and he said, nope, I want to be clear. I am not saying to go open your business. I'm simply saying I think we could and we should, and that he's choosing not to use the resources of the sheriff's department to chase down people that are, technically breaking the order from the governor.
Right.
And there, as mayor, my first, I'm 3 days in now, or 4 days in. I've had people email me telling me that I should shut down the state park and that I should implement, people shouldn't be able to walk together too close. And someone, wrote and said, there's people biking together. They're closer than 6 feet. This is America. We do not want to get in a place where we are telling you that you can't, do things. And I want to make sure that we protect our freedoms, but we have to be smart about it. And when we do open that economy back up, we have to figure out a way to do it safely. So your wife's a doctor. Has she told you what the plan is? she
No, but I do know that there. Well, I do know that there is a plan, because hospitals and clinics are going to have to reopen. COVID is not going away. It's going to be around. There could be 3 waves. There could be a second wave this fall. There could be a third wave next spring. We don't know. So one of the things that's going to come out of this, hospitals are just going to have to adapt. They're going to have to adapt the way they do intake, the way you go in. I think you're going to see a lot more masking, a lot more. If you have a fever, if you have these symptoms, you're going to go in one place. If you don't, you're going to go in another. And I think that's okay. But I can tell you one of the issues, to me, I think the biggest issue that we have is that we don't really have any good options right now. We cannot stay sheltered in place for 6 more months. The economy will be destroyed, and people will go nuts, and they won't, especially, where we live, the greater, and maybe where Dryden reaches, people are going to be out and about. There's just no keeping you in your house for the next 6 months. So that's not a good thing. And secondarily, if you just say, okay, now you can go, take the Minnesota State Fair, let's say it was next week, 250,000 people for 2 weeks, every day for 2 weeks, are going to be in tight spaces touching each other.
Yeah.
That's not a good option either. There really isn't any good options, and we're not used to that in America, right? We're used to figuring out how to figure it out. So Mayo Clinic said that they're going to be able to test 20,000 people. Was it a week or a day? A week, coming up in the next couple of weeks. And I know in Wisconsin there are a number of labs, and Epic, the big electronic medical record producer, and all the different a lot of different academic institutions are banding together to figure out how to get more testing done. And that's really what we need to do. We need to figure out how many people actually have been sick, because now there's these studies that are kind of popping up, one out of California, one out of New York, where maybe 15, 18, 20 people, 20% of people have already had COVID and never knew it.
20 to
and
30%.
Again, we don't, right. It could be 30, 40%. They're talking of factors of 50 or 80 times the amount, going back and doing autopsies of people from in January and December to say, hey, maybe we missed that. As time goes on, we'll get more information. We'll get better, more accurate testing. And when that happens, things will be able to open up, more drastically. But, you talk about, the WIAA school got canceled in Wisconsin this week or last week. And then the WIAA, the sports, they canceled sports in the spring. And as a track coach, it's sad for me. I wish the kids get a chance to compete, and it's just a sense of normalcy. But, I'm thinking about football and soccer and things in volleyball that start in August. That's not that far away.
Right.
I'm starting to have a hard time seeing how, unless something dramatically changes, that's going to be opened up. I'm having a hard time seeing, groups of 500 people or more of that being something that we're going to be able to do or something that I would be willing to do.
Right.
You know, there's two things. Is it illegal, or would you be willing to do it? And even if it's legal, like Georgia is opening a lot of things up, like movie theaters, I think tomorrow or today or Monday. Right. I would not go to a movie right now with 250 other people in the same room. I just wouldn't. I mean, I'm going to let that play out for a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's important for us to realize that moving forward, there's going to be changes. You know, I talked about in one of our last shows that there might be changes from a building perspective on, you know, how
right.
we have ADA requirements. We may have COVID requirements where now you have air barriers or different HVAC systems or less seating. So if you take a restaurant
right.
that typically survives off of 60 seats, so, you know, the fire marshal says you can have 60
right.
people in this, and they're making enough money to get by. And now
you got 30.
Yeah. So now we say, hey, we got to cut that down. You need to put less tables. What do you do? Because your profits go down when you can't seat as many people. And either you're going to hurry them up and get them out the door, or you're going to raise your prices, or you're going to close your doors. And those are things that are going to face every restaurant.
Right.
And you're going to have to probably get used to people wearing a mask when you get your order taken. One thing that concerns me is the people who, not so much the mask, although I don't know that every mask is built the same, but it's people who go to the grocery store and they wear their gloves in, and they wear their gloves when they touch everything and when they check out and when they're grabbing their keys and they open their door, and then they take the gloves off once they're in the car, and you don't know what they do with them. And it's like, gloves are meant to be disposable.
They're disposable.
And you're not supposed to use them every time you touch. You're supposed to get a new pair of gloves every time you touch something new. And so
the glove thing to me doesn't make any sense.
No.
It's more you know, the mask thing does, right? Sneezing or whatever, you know, from your perspective, if you're out, just say, you know, you're walking through Walmart or Menards or whatever, and you have a mask on and you sneeze, it contains that, right?
Right.
So unless you have an N95 on, you know, that actually is tight fit around, or a respirator, you're not doing a ton of work. You know, it's not stopping a ton of stuff from coming in, although cloth, you know, cotton will stop a certain amount, but it's better than nothing.
It needs to be,
but it saves those droplets going out.
Knit tightness, but
right.
It's going to get the big stuff. But, you know, COVID's a little tiny thing. So what are you really stopping? And but here
we're still back.
We're still back
to not touching your face and washing your hands. I mean,
that's watching.
That's it.
Congress,
and that's all I do.
Yeah. Watching Congress do their speeches on the floor yesterday, and you can watch it on C-SPAN if you want. Half of them weren't wearing the mask. Half of them are touching their face, or the mask was riding up on their eyes. I mean, it was like just driving me nuts as a person who does medical calls, and you just don't touch your face. Like, once the mask's on, you just don't touch it, and it's hard. But to watch that. Having taken a lot of classes on PPE and safety and all that stuff, you're just like, you're breaking every rule. So those are some things that I think we'll have to kind of figure out. But you know, beyond that, this is something that I agree should be regionally directed. I think that's going to be a real tough thing for the governor to. He would have to give away some authority to say, okay, county or city or whatever, you get to dictate some of these things, and then you've let the control out, and it's hard to get that back. So we need to think of ways to do it, and it's going to happen. I just don't want to come back in 3 months and say we got to do it all over again because we didn't do it right. And that's
so I agree. I agree 100%. You know, it's still the social distancing, maybe not the level that we have, but extra cleaning, extra disinfecting. If you go out and, you know, wash your hands, don't touch your face, wash them a lot. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. There's a thing, you know, again, we live in an area, you know, our area of the world outside of the Minneapolis metro has a lot of space. We aren't densely populated. And the weather's warming up. So we're going to be outside more. We're not going to be trapped in as often. And I can tell you, 62 degrees and sun or whatever it is, you know, outside right now, man, that felt good at lunch. I sat outside for a little bit and I'm like, yeah, spring is coming. And it gave me a little sense of optimism that we're gonna get through this. But again, once something goes political, you never know what's going to happen. It really is. It's too bad that this is a public health deal and it turns into this binary option of Republican or Democrat, good or bad, depending upon where you sit. And quite frankly, it's kind of disgusting on both sides that this is a political football. It shouldn't be. And I hope that there's enough adults in the room that they can sit down and get a deal hammered out in Wisconsin. Same in Minnesota. I know in Iowa, I got a text from a buddy that said that they're essentially on Monday, they're going to start loosening up quite a bit. So it's going to happen around us, and people are going to be traveling around us, and it'll be fascinating to play out. I hope everybody stays safe. That's the bottom line. That's why we're doing this, right? Stay safe.
Yeah.
Please stay safe. Don't do anything stupid. Don't give up and just decide to have a party with 50 people or 100 people. There's a lot of vulnerable. And I think the more the stats come out is like especially like nursing homes or assisted living facilities are just, the numbers in there they're just devastating.
Yeah. And there are
just,
people,
if it gets in.
Definitely there's people, as this does open up, that should not be in the first wave of opens. There's a lot of vulnerable people that should stay in their homes and really monitor the situation and not jump right into, opening up the economy. So now elderly people that are dealing with lung issues are going to the movies. Still use common sense, still use protection, wash your hands, do all those things.
Yeah.
But eventually we've got to pay for all this. And I think that's where it comes down to it. 'Cause, 4 trillion, 5 trillion, when's it stop? And,
it doesn't.
It doesn't. So, well, I think that's it for today. If you want resources on the PPP loans or any of the small business things that are out there, you can go to our Facebook page at Kirk and Bill Show, and you can look in the post, and you'll find those. I think Bill's still available for some
I am
conversations, and
please call me and talk to me. It'll at the very least it'll give me something to do. Not that I have anything. Okay, teachers need to be paid more because they aren't paid enough, and I am not a teacher. What I've learned is that my skill set is not teaching, kindergarten, 4K, first grade, second grade. That is not what I was put on this earth to do. So please call me.
That's great. Yeah, I appreciate my wife who homeschools our kids and is very patient. I will give her that.
And if you're a homeschooler, tip of the hat to you as well, because again, that's just not something that I've learned that now that this is not something that I am called to do.
You got to find your gift.
So,
you can't rely on that. Well, it's been
no square pegs and round holes.
It's been a busy week, and I look forward to the weekend. Bill, thanks for being a part of the show. Look forward to next week. We'll have some more updates, but stay well, stay safe, and we will catch you on the next show. Thanks, everyone.
See you. Thanks, Kurt. Have a good weekend.
You too.